Thank you for joining us for our training on our upcoming mission trip. What I'd like to do in this first session is to provide you just a brief introduction and overview to the country known as Jamaica, where we're headed, and a little bit about our culture and people so that you can understand and begin to wrap your mind over where you're going. And I think that is always important as we visit a country. Particularly, this would be important to those who are going for the first time. So, in terms of a brief history of Jamaica, what would you need to know? Well, let's just say that in terms of its formal discovery, and you'll understand what I mean when I say formal discovery in a little bit, Jamaica was formally discovered by Christopher Columbus and his group from Spain in 1494. Formally discovered. What that means, however, is that Christopher Columbus and the Spaniards really did not discover Jamaica first, because when they arrived there in 1494, there was a group of Arawak Indians who were living in Jamaica. They were believed to have been there from arrived there maybe somewhere from South America, and is believed to have been there some even 2,000 years before Columbus got there. Well, we don't have any records really to prove that they've been there that long. What is important to know is that Columbus laid claim on his discovery of Jamaica, but the truth was there were people living there prior to Columbus. So how was he able, and the Spaniards, to successfully lay claim on the island? Well, as they arrived on the island, they were met by our Indians who had never seen, these huge ships before. They'd never seen these lighter complexion men before. They'd never seen their guns and their dogs and other weapons before. And so, of course, the Arawaks, they were afraid. They attacked. Some ran and hid themselves. And the Spaniards hunted the Indians, and they killed as many as they could find. Some were poisoned, some were fed to dogs. And so with the Indians that remained, that survived that onslaught, they retreated to the hills and the mountains of Jamaica. And there they stayed until, again, they were some were starved to death, and when others ventured out to find food, Columbus and his men, they would intentionally lace food with poison and leave it around for them. The poor, hungry Indians would then discover the food, be thankful for it. They would eat and take back to their camps or their villages, or really more like caves up in the mountains, share it among themselves. And the poison would spread, of course, and many would die. Eventually, all the Arawak Indians, or most of them, would die out. Of course, Columbus did capture some, and he enslaved some. That was the first sign of slavery on the islands of Jamaica, brought on by Christopher Columbus and his men. So it's been a difficult time. So the Indians, as they found Jamaica, they initially named it Zamaica. I think that would spell Xamaca. And so, which stands for land of wood and water. And so we still use that phrase today, that Jamaica is a land of wood and water, because most of Jamaica as an island is surrounded by mountains with lots of trees, and then various bodies of water, whether it be rivers flowing down from the mountains and springs, or the Caribbean Ocean, which can be easily accessed from many vantage points around the island. I don't think that there is any place in Jamaica where you'd have to travel, more than an hour to be near the ocean. Most places you are in Jamaica, you're very just a few miles away from the ocean. So, just in terms of a brief overview, that's who the country is. Of course, the Spaniards were there 1494, and then came the British in 1655, somewhere there. A huge war broke out between the British and the Spaniards. The British won. The Spaniards ran for their lives. They went to a neighboring Caribbean island known as Cuba. So Cuba speaks Spanish today because of the Spanish influence from Christopher Columbus and his men who survived the onslaught in the battle by the British. And so then the British came, it took Jamaica over, it further enslaved Jamaicans. The British brought in slaves from Africa as well to serve in Jamaica. And of course, as the Spaniards retreated, they left behind their slaves, whom they had originally captured from the Arawak Indians. And so the British would then further enslave those, and some of them would be set free. We call those Maroons today, and they are still are places in Jamaica today where, you know, descendants of the Maroons still live. And so Jamaica is really, Kingston today is the capital of Jamaica, and it became the capital of Jamaica under the British. The first capital of Jamaica is known as Spanish Town, which is in St. Catherine, and obviously that's why it's called Spanish Town, because the Spaniards lived there. And so things have changed over time. So again, I think that's all you need to know. Jamaica exists in the Caribbean. It's among the Caribbean islands, the third, or I think the fourth largest, but I really think it's the third largest Caribbean island. Incidentally, Cuba and Haiti, as poor as Haiti is still larger than Jamaica. So it's one of 28 nation islands that within that area. In terms of the size of Jamaica, just so that you understand how small of an island it is, Jamaica is about, we would say roughly 4,200, 250 really, 4,244 square miles. So if you would think of terms of North Carolina, which is over 53,000 square miles, near 54,000 square miles, you could take Jamaica and drop it in North Carolina, fold up North Carolina several times, probably about 12 to 13 times to get to the size of Jamaica. So North Carolina is nearly 13 times the size of Jamaica. So it's a very small island. Of course, when you are living there or traveling around the island, it takes a much longer time than it does to travel around North Carolina here because of, you know, the development in roads. And you go and you see Jamaica, we don't really blast holes through mountains and build caves and roads. We actually go up, snake up the mountains, and come on back down. So driving is very slow. It seems like we're driving for a very long time when you're driving there, but really you've not been driving for a very far distance. So that's in terms of the size of Jamaica. We have 14 parishes. That would be the equivalent of states here. So we have parishes, then we have cities, some towns. We seldom even speak about villages because really we don't have villages. Some we say towns would be the closest you would get to villages in Jamaica. Very festive people. Love their music. So, you know, reggae music developed in Jamaica. Some people would know prominent people like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, guys like that, that really brought Jamaica to the world. Of course, you also know of Usain Bolt and Powell and Merlin Ottey. Some might remember them, but even more in recent times, we would remember Usain Bolt for his last 3 Olympics and the record of medals that he has taken in those. So we're very much known as the sprinting country, and for maybe the last 4 or 5 Olympics, we have held onto records for being the fastest men and women of the world. In terms of our language, it's an English-speaking country. We say British English because of the influence of the Brits in Jamaica for the years when we were colonized by Britain. And speaking of being colonized by Britain, so that you understand, Jamaica receives its independence from Britain just in 1962. And so in 1962, we celebrated what we call the birth of a new nation, simply because of our independence. At that point, or prior to that, we were using the British money, the British pound. So with our independence, we clamored for our own money. And so we have Jamaican dollar, which is a very, very weak currency. Currently, $1 might be the equivalent of about 120 Jamaican dollars. So If you have 1,000 Jamaican dollars, you can be quite a rich person or last you a long time in Jamaica. I'm exaggerating when I say really rich with $1,000, but I mean, if $120 for $1 currently in June 2017, then 1,000 US dollars would be 120 $1,000 Jamaican dollars. So it's a good, fair amount of money that would last for some time. So again, language English, but we do have a dialect that is called patois. It's spelled Patois. It's a French word, but we don't speak French. Of course, there was a time when we had some French-speaking people, again, coming to Jamaica for labor and industry. But we do, English is our language, and you will be able to understand most of what we speak. Of course, when we're in our comfort zone, we talk with patois, and you might have to say to someone, please speak English, and we'll be able to speak it, and you'll be able to understand. So coming from America, there's not going to be a great challenge in understanding how to speak in Jamaica, because tourism has been around and been a major earner of foreign currency for us, and so we're used to having tourists primarily from the United States, and so many Jamaicans would be familiar with the American accent. Might still have to ask you to repeat some things, as well as you may have to ask some Jamaicans when you're speaking to them to repeat some things. Particularly the children going to school, yes, they're being taught in English, but the patois is very much the heart language. It's a common language. It's a comfort language. So if someone says something to you and you don't understand, just ask them to repeat a few times and to speak it in English, and they'll try their best to do that. So in terms of our government style in Jamaica, it's very much democratic. Like the United States, we have two major political parties. US, we say Democrats and Republicans. In Jamaica, we say the PNP, which stands for People's National Party, and the Jamaica Labour Party, the JLP. So those are the two major political parties, and again, government style is very much democratic. And so we don't have whereas we don't have a president, we do have a prime minister, just like Britain today has a prime minister of the country. So I think that's the basic that you need to know. Poverty is very rampant in Jamaica. Economical hardship is going to be very evident there. And you'll see as people they'll beg out of a heartbeat. If you're in one of the city squares, you won't be surprised if an adult, or more likely a child, a teenager, comes and asks you for something, some money to buy food. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on under the section that we speak about safety in Jamaica. But let me just speak to it while we're at it. When we're there, if you feel like you want to share something with someone, do so. But what we do recommend is not to walk with large sums of money. Because just like in the United States or anywhere else in the world, someone can ask you for money to see if you have lots of money on you, and if you go rummaging through your wallet or your purse and you are peeling out wads of cash to hand them, a $50 bill, Jamaican dollar that is, or a 20 Jamaican dollar, and they see large sums of cash, then you automatically become a target. Jamaicans are sinners, just as Americans are, and other people in other parts of the world are sinners. So we'll have to be careful about that, and again, we'll speak to that. Like in large states and cities in the United States, Charlotte, for instance, Durham, Raleigh, Atlanta, the crime rate is high, and you'll hear about murders and shooting and car crashes and so on and so forth. So you'll have that in Jamaica as well. But again, we do have a plan for safety that we've used in all the years that I've been taking trips there, and we've not had any challenges so far. Each year, however, can be an exception to that, but we try our very best to remain safe. And again, we do have a little web that we use that keeps us safe, and as long as we operate within those parameters, we'll be fine. We'll talk a little bit now about the motto and the flag of Jamaica. So our motto is "Out of many, one people," and that's because there are many different people groups in Jamaica. Again, we still have Spaniards there. We still have descendants of the Arawak Indians there. We do have Indians from East India coming to Jamaica. We do have Chinese who came to Jamaica in the earlier years, particularly in the 60s or even before then. Shortly after, the British came and they began to develop industry and the sugarcane and all of that. Different people groups came to Jamaica because of the opportunity of business, and they have stayed there generations later. They're still there. So you'll find Chinese, you'll find Japanese, you'll find Americans, Caucasian Americans, African Americans living in Jamaica, and they've been there for a number of years. And so again, we say out of many, one people. We want to emphasize the oneness of Jamaica, but also to recognize that Jamaica comprises a group of people from different parts of the world. Of course, we know we do have Africans there, and so we as Jamaicans originally might have been more of a brown complexion, mixed that with darker complexions from Africa. Some might say we are black. We don't think so, however, but we're not offended by those who might say that. So again, the motto, out of many, one people. As to our flag, you might notice if you've taken a look at it, it is black, green, and gold. And that has been, it's not coincidental. So let's talk about what that means, and we will conclude this training session for today. So black, of course, it represents the burden of the people, the burden that they bore, of course, under the different people groups that have enslaved them. Of course, we have the Spaniards and we have the British, and so it represents that. Some people would say black because it's the color of our skin, but those who say that really don't understand the history of Jamaica. The color black, again, represents the burdens that have been borne by the people of Jamaica, and that we still do bear to a certain extent. Certainly not in the terms of being enslaved physically by some other people group, because we remain an independent nation. But there are still economic burdens that we bear, and so we would still find the black in the flag to be applicable. Now, green speaks or represents, the landscape and the hope of our greater future. So with an island surrounded by lots of trees, not necessarily forests, so to speak, but lots of trees and mountains, and so it's just green all over. And so it represents the landscape, but also hope of future, hope of growth. And so as we think of a tree, we plant a seed and we see it sprouts, and we see the green leaf, and we expect it to grow and produce fruit, and then that will continue for many, many years to come. So the green represents that for us. The yellow or the gold in our flag speaks to the sunshine and the natural resources of the island. So yes, there's lots of sun in Jamaica. So let's speak to that for a minute. It is hot in Jamaica. But we experience the summer here, and it's very hot in the summer here as well. The difference is it is not as humid in Jamaica as it is here. However, anywhere we live, certainly we will become accustomed to it, because that's just the way God makes us. However, we will feel the heat, but we'll get accustomed to it, after a day or two. And then where we're administering, again, it's going to be a very one of the cooler areas, because it's on the northern end of the island with the ocean, very, very close by anyhow. So it shouldn't be so hot where we are. But again, it's summer in Jamaica, so we'll expect it to be hot. So we will discuss, how to dress for that. As many cotton t-shirts as possible, jeans or shorts, not short shorts, particularly for the ladies, men as well. But like a jean shorts or khaki short that would be to the knee level would be very much appropriate for the ministry that we'll do. Most times I wear jeans there. Even for VBS, I might wear shorts once, but most times we'll do jeans. So that's just a brief overview of Jamaica, its history, where it's located, culture. We haven't really spoken much about the customs, but we can get to that. Language, a little bit about the heritage of the people, you know, its development, its government, a little bit about poverty, the motto of the country, and of course concluding that with our flag, black, green, and gold. Some say yellow, but for Jamaicans we say gold, but it's fine if we say yellow. So we'll conclude for now. And next time when we meet, we'll talk about other issues relative to safety, relationships with the team, or spiritual growth that we'll expect, so on and so forth. Thank you, and God bless.